HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Friends and Dark Shapes by Kavita Bedford, read by Kat Gould. Spring 1. The year after my father died, I move into a share house. I know Nikki from parties in our younger years, and I first met Sammy at a friend's garage sale years ago where I wanted a pair of dice cufflinks, and he laughed at me. There is a spare room in the house that still needs to be filled. The three of us want a gender balance, so on a Saturday we hold housemate interviews. Here, people gravitate mostly towards friends of friends, because that's how you get anything. But we decide we want to branch out and to try someone new. We put it all over Facebook and online groups, and people's bios spill out as desperate pleas. The profiles people make to find a room in cities are an inventory of likes and carefully crafted personal stories, and we quickly become pros at reading between the lines. The first guy comes at 11 a.m. and has a dad who is a big name in the film industry, and we feel an embarrassed thrill ripple through us when he arrives. He is a lad, but a rich lad, who tells us that sometimes he likes to slum it, and he wears all his contradictions in a jarring mix of Adidas button-up pants and Ralph Lauren polo shirts with Ray-Bans, and his gold ring glints as he shakes Sammy's hand. We see that he drove to our place in a beat-up BMW that is now parked out front at an awkward angle, creating traffic problems in the narrow street. He speaks to us in long drawls, which makes him seem unimpressed by everything. He is holding a big takeaway cup and slurping through a straw, and he nods at us, shaking the cup, and in his long drawl he says, "Banana and berry smoothie. I fucking love the combo." He runs a bar that we all know in the area that his dad bought for him, and it means long nights, so he wants to live somewhere within walking distance. "Fuck, these house meetings are the worst, eh?" he says, and we agree out loud. He tells us he knows the boys who live on the neighbouring street. We know those boys too. They are part of a local hip-hop band, and they have made some songs about different pretty girls in different streets of Sydney, and their songs have started to play on the radio. They party all night and have a slouchy, worn leather couch on the porch, and there's always a different group of young girls passed out on that couch, while the boys blare Aussie hip-hop and wave the national flag proudly. And although they are always friendly and wave when we walk by, there is something jangled and uneasy that comes out of that house. He walks through the space, peering over his sunglasses. We trot behind him and tell him about the electricity and the quarterly bill breakdown, and he lists the rooms in our house, saying, "I mean, it's just bedroom, kitchen, lounge, bathroom, bedroom." He says, "It's not for me," and he walks out, slurping the remains of his smoothie. The second guy arrives at lunchtime, and he says he is a sound artist and that he creates poetry based on codes. "The patterns binary codes make can be beautiful," he says, "and you can create shapes out of these." He asks if our internet plan includes unlimited data and measures the room to see if it can fit his equipment, and Sammy tells him about the Wi-Fi bundle and asks him, "How does computer poetry sound?" And the guy says he randomly generates code to match with words, and then he performs these in part binary and part words. He says it makes him feel like some mad Dada guy in Zurich. He has to get going as he needs to prepare for a collective poetry reading, and then he looks puzzled and says, "But how random is any of this really? I mean, those Dada guys cut out bits of paper with words on them, but they still chose the words, and even those words were a product of a time and a place. And sometimes," he says, "I wonder how much in life really is sequential randomness, as we often like to pretend it is." The third guy tells us that he has just arrived from California, and this we already know. He likes foals and the XX and anything dreamy, and wanted to move to Australia because it suited his lifestyle, but with more sun. This we also know. We know a lot about him before he arrives from his Facebook profile. He walks around the house talking, repeating his likes and dislikes, but telling us his story, and as he speaks, he touches everything, the kettle, the bench top, he even fingers the curtains. I mean, I'm just interested in good vibes, you know? I want to resonate with everything. His hair is tied up in a ponytail, and he wears loose cotton clothing and Birkenstocks and has thin woven bracelets along his arm. As he forcefully speaks of good energies, as though willing them into the space, he seems to grow while we three seem to shrink. There is no room for questions. He tells us things we never asked. He tells us his brother travelled here once, before he died, and he did a fruit-picking season, and he always said, "Go to Sydney, he'd said, and you will be free." So I think, yeah, maybe in Sydney the ghosts won't follow me so much, you know? I figure you're a country even younger than ours, so the haunting might stop here, right? I feel a thud of recognition, but there is something about the way he says all of this, like it is some showman script, so I don't show that I agree. Everything in most houses is dead, he continues. I've been to so many houses in this city, and I feel the occupants and their furniture are dead, you know? He says that music is spiralling downwards and everything feels the same, and he has travelled and done so many things in his life, already at 30, but sometimes he feels so exhausted at the thought that he needs to keep going and that no one is saying anything new. Coachella is dead. Burning Man is dead. I want to feel light, he says. I want to feel I can breathe again. It suffocates me. You have so much sun. Why are you people so dead? He eventually stops and rests against a door frame and holds his hands wide, framing us all in the picture. But your kitchen table is alive. We are all silent for a beat, and Sammy looks at me and Nicky and takes charge of the conversation, giving long, affirmative sounds, but I notice he doesn't offer a beer or something to drink like he did with the others. That evening, a last-minute friend of a friend tells us he is interested, and he comes over for a beer. He works in a guitar shop, and he says he thinks Afghan hounds are the best dogs in the world, and we look at pictures of the hounds together, and he laughs easily. We end up picking a friend of this friend to make our new home in this city. 2. Chairman Mao lives next door to us, in the subsidised Housing Commission flats, and his room looks right down into our backyard. It's the perfect distance to throw things, which he does, often. In the beginning we could understand the irritation caused by a group of young people having parties, but rather than yell or complain, he expressed his frustration via objects that would come sailing out of his window and land in the backyard. At first it was just pieces of trash, but he realised the power he wielded when during one party he threw a glass bottle and it smashed on the brick courtyard. A girl's arm was cut and another guy received a small gash on his forehead. People started screaming. Another bottle was hurled from the window and everyone ran inside. The Cultural Revolution has begun, Sammy muttered. From then on, he knew how to control the crowds and activities at our house. We've never seen his face, but everyone seems to agree that he is a small Asian man with a long wispy beard who sometimes rummages in the dumpsters in the back alley. He is an elusive character. When the police were called, we could hear them banging on his door, but as far as we could tell, he never answered. Lately, the bottle smashing has increased, and the triggers are becoming more strange and inexplicable. Just this morning we were all drinking tea, reading the paper and doing the weekend quiz together outside when a beer bottle shattered next to us. And it seems it is happening to houses all along the street. His apartment has prime viewing position over the shorter terrace houses, like some panopticon on the back streets of Redfern. This week, a note was pushed under our door calling for neighbourly resistance and urging us to alert the police whenever it happened to raise our united voice against his actions and to mount our solidarity. The note comes from one of the houses that has recently been sold to a young lawyer couple, and all of us feel uneasy about this note. Without much discussion of its implications, we stick it to our fridge. As kids, we weren't allowed to go to the street we are now living on. Parents rerouted their cars past the inner city shortcut with a wag of the finger and a long tisk directed down its narrow frame. It is part of The Block in Redfern, a concrete plot provided to the Aboriginal people 30 years ago that became known as rough housing land. This street is a government-commissioned space next to train tracks and broken telegraph poles and squashed terraces. A space forced to be reimagined into a spiritual reckoning. A block of land filled with different tribes and families ripped from their waterways and the salt air and their songs. Real estate advertisements have started calling our street an ideal location, and it is walking distance to the pop-up bars and the growers' markets and the bike store cafe. There is a community herb garden and film festivals screen in the laneways. 2 streets away is a telegraph pole with "Fuck gentrification" scribbled over it. Just this week, Indigenous protesters have set up camp outside the train station to speak out against the forced housing relocation of local tenants to make way for new developments. We decide, mainly due to the bottle smashing, to cover the courtyard in astroturf. So, on the first warm day of spring, we buy supplies at Bunnings and prepare for a backyard blitz. We throw ourselves into the fun, and what began as a practical solution now has us daydreaming about purchasing flamingo statues and wicker chairs and turning the backyard into some kitsch Florida cabana. We have bought small palms and are in the process of repotting them. Our new housemate's pretty, delicate features, coupled with his intense hoarding of blue junk, has earned him the nickname Bowerbird. He is distracted because he has a date with a girl he really likes who works at the local cafe, and she is due to arrive at any moment. So, while we're on our knees cutting up the turf and digging our hands deep into the potting mix, he hovers uselessly, not wanting to fully commit to the task at hand and destroy his smart, casual outfit, instead checking his phone every couple of minutes. The girl arrives, and she is a tumble of hair. She pushes her bike, laughing, into the backyard. We all do our hellos, and Bowerbird explains the note on the fridge, and Chairman Mao, and the astroturf, and as we work and chat, she sits on our back step and rolls a cigarette, and seems in no rush to leave. She lives on the other side of the suburb, across the park, near a different set of Housing Commission flats. She lives with one other girl. One night, when she was home alone, she saw the shape of a man at her front door and could hear him breathing. She freaked out, but in her gut she knew this man wanted her fear, which made her angry, so she ran to the kitchen and grabbed 2 saucepans and ran back to the corridor and screamed, "Fuck off, you fucking perv!" and began smashing the pans together, and just kept up her aggression chant until she saw his shape leave. She is laughing as she says this, and I can feel us as a group become a little bit impressed by the cafe girl. A lot of the houses on her street are occupied by young women living together, and each one is experiencing something similar. She tells us the police came around later that week and spoke to her. They told her they were taking it very seriously. Several women had complained. The man did the same thing at each house, just watched and breathed heavily, and so far no physical assaults had been reported. He was probably from the area and knew they were all young women, and one night the police chased him, but he disappeared and there was nothing to charge him with yet. They said, "Please tell us if you see anyone in the area who is tall, dark, and wears a hoodie, and report it immediately." But, she says, she had suddenly shrunk back from the implications of those words. She says, "It's the area, you know, all these layers of different people, the Indigenous community, the Housing Commission folk, the students, the young professionals. We move here because we love these contradictions, but sometimes they feel too much, you know? It's almost like everyone feels robbed of their freedom in some way, and so everyone wants to find who took it." Bowerbird makes a motion for them to go, and she stubs out her cigarette and says it was nice to meet us all, and then they walk out the garage door. We go back to our cabana lounges and silently drink our green tea. At some point, Sammy walks inside and takes the note off the fridge door and throws it in the bin. We continue tucking the astroturf into all the corners of the courtyard. 3. Katie and I are drinking tea on a sunny afternoon in her rambling backyard. We have laid out cushions and rugs under the trees. We have both had big nights out, at separate parties, and it is taking all our mental concentration to lift the pot of steaming tea and pour. Her night was magic mushrooms, bonfire hallucinations, and threesomes. Mine was a party where we dressed up as our favourite Game of Thrones character. It is the first party I've been to since my father passed, and for my debut, I mostly sat on the steps with a bottle of red wine, picking at the label and playing with my plastic sword, occasionally replying in bad ye-olde English and confused wall metaphors when someone spoke to me. Everything Katie does is wild. She has lived all over the world, in Istanbul, Tehran, Paris, and she has a wild mess of curls and never seems to sleep. She's a couple of years younger than me and told me once that I think about the world of tomorrows too much. I've always done what I want and then dealt with the next situation as it arises, she told me matter-of-factly. Katie is asking me about the new house and how I like it. She asks me how Alex, my boyfriend, feels about me moving out with different people. I mean, she says, I know you two haven't exactly been good since... She trails off, and I pretend not to notice. Last night, Alex came over to help me move my wardrobe, an old bulky thing that didn't fit easily up the narrow stairwell that leads to my bedroom. Alex held the wardrobe at the bottom, and I tried to steer the tip of it up the stairs, but my hands kept slipping. You need to move it the other way, he said, and I heard him swear softly. Sammy had come in and asked if we wanted a hand. We gratefully accepted, and it took almost 20 minutes to inch it, with minute precision, into the bedroom. We were all puffing and swearing, but also laughing. I didn't think we would make it, said Sammy. Alex and Sammy high-fived each other. Alex and I smiled, and for a moment we were light in each other's presence. I offered to buy them both a beer to thank them, but Sammy looked at his phone and said he had to go. Oh, Alex said, and I noticed he looked disappointed. We both walked up the road to the bar in silence, our arms at our sides. Sammy seems nice, he said, and I agreed. That wardrobe was a monster, he added. We sat for a while longer, and then he said he had to leave. Katie's doorbell rings and her friend joins us. She went to the same party as Katie and lies down on the cushions with a sigh of relief. She has aquiline features and an asymmetrical haircut, with strands of grey already appearing through the thick brown fringe, and she wears a septum ring and clunky silver jewellery. She's like an Almodovar heroine, Katie said before she arrived, and it's true. She talks with her jewelled hands and has long, slender fingers. She is beautiful to watch. We lie back on the rugs and cushions and watch as rainbow lorikeets descend on a date palm and screech away above us. They come every day at 3 o'clock, says Katie. The Almodovar heroine talks about how she wants to buy a hat, but she is nervous about wearing a hat as she has never worn one before and feels the precedent has not been set. You're either a hat person or not, she says, and if you were going to suddenly, after years of being a non-hat person, put one on, it must be done with complete confidence. The birds loosen debris from the tree above, and date husks cascade onto us. A branch falls down and hits the friend, who gently says, "Ouch." The branch is filled with crimson pods, half flowering, and Katie laughs and says to her friend, "Of course only you would get struck by the prettiest branch in the world," while we shake the brown husks and twigs out of our hair. The doorbell rings again, and the partner of the Almodovar heroine walks in. He nods his head in greeting and lies next to her in the sun. as we continue to talk lazily about the best way to mix a Bloody Mary and the pros and cons of living out west and the ethnic food compared to the city brunch food, and laugh about weird neurotic habits we picked up in our teens, like nail biting and scab picking, he remains silent. Instead, he brushes her hair and flicks the grass off her legs and strokes her eyebrows. They lie back in the sun and dissolve into each other. I feel upset. I can't tell if I'm beginning to fall in love with her a little bit, or if I want to be her. Maybe they're always the same thing. With women my age, I have a desperate desire to be them. I watch them put on bright red lipstick, laugh on the phone while walking down King Street, distractedly touch a mole on one cheek in a cafe in Surrey Hills. I imagine this woman, trying on hats and adjusting the tilt of the brim with her long ringed fingers, smiling, anchored to her world. Katie shows us funny videos of sloths on YouTube. My phone rings, and it is a man saying he has a work gig for me, and when I hang up, I feel tired from being around all these people, and I quietly grab my bag from the couch and slip out her front door. 4. To pay the rent, I've begun working as a freelance journalist. I've found another part-time job working for an organisation in the suburbs, teaching media skills, which provides me with an office a couple of days a week, and the rest of the time I wander around the city, hustling for new jobs and pitching stories. Today I am meeting Paul, a photographer. I contacted him when I saw some work he did about everyday moments of Sydney, specifically in the city's suburbs, which people don't normally care to take photos of or talk about. Paul tells me his girlfriend has just found out she's pregnant, and so he needs work that is flexible, but he also wants to take photos of subjects he cares about, which is always a fine balance, he says. He keeps stopping halfway through talking to blow his nose and then apologise. "It's the hay fever," he says. "This city goes pollen crazy from the wattle in the springtime." Paul and I are going to meet with a woman who has set up a hijab clothing store in a mall in a suburb out west. In the car driving to the clothing store, he tells me he spends the rest of his time working as a night stay for people with disabilities. It is back and heartbreaking work, he says. Some of the people who work as night carers in the disability services are like him, who has a brother with a disability, and so they come at it with so much love, but they feel it all too much because it is at home and at work, and there is often little separation of the self, and often these are the people who leave after a while. Some of the others don't understand so much, and the night shift pays all right, but they take all the outbursts and bodily problems of the people personally, and to survive they grow an armour, and they roll their eyes and make jokes, and roughly heave the clients about like feeble pieces of flesh. And often it is these people who stay. He has a favourite client, who often asks him to come in the afternoon rather than at night, so he can have company in the sunlight. And they go to a park near the clinic, and there is a little ice cream shop close by, and it is their ritual to get ice cream and then feed pieces of the waffle cone to the pigeons. This man laughs so much when the birds come that it is infectious, and Paul always feels lighter and happier. That is the truth of someone's character, how a person makes you feel after you walk away from spending time with them. When we arrive at the shop, the owner is choosing fabrics from huge swatches, and she grabs my arm in a familiar way and pulls me into her space, saying, "Which one do you reckon, this one or that one?" I point to a slightly deeper magenta than the other, and she nods and says, "Yep, I knew it." She was born in Syria and moved here when she was 12, and she tells us she was originally studying to be a lawyer, and then laughs and rolls her eyes at us. Typical Arab parents, right? But she says that she struggled to find clothes to wear to her classes. "I had just made the choice to put on an abaya, and I was happy about that," she says, "even though it was after September 11. But, you know, the thing that bothered me most was I was young, and I wanted to look damn hot. You know, before this, We were getting our clothes from overseas, and they had nothing to do with the fashion here, or else we had to go to the stores out in the suburbs that our mums shopped in. I mean, what young woman wants that? I wanted to be fashionable and look beautiful, but also honour my faith, you know? So she started to make her own clothes. While studying for my law exams, she says, I would have this sewing machine next to me, and in breaks I started making my own clothes with nice fabrics and little features like a cinched waist or a hot little belt, but still modest, right? And soon some of my friends started asking me to make it for them, and then I realised there was this huge gap in the market in Australia. She is jokey and easygoing, and also passionate about her fashion and why it is important. Obviously now it's becoming huge, she continues, which is so exciting. You have fast fashion brands like Uniqlo and H&M, and then big designers like Dolce & Gabbana getting on board. But there was nothing like this when I was growing up, and that wasn't very long ago. She takes us around the shop, and while Paul trails behind us taking photos, she speaks to me about different cuts and lengths, and we swap our likes and dislikes in current fashion, and she tells me what shades would work best against my skin colour. I admire her eyebrows, which are perfectly waxed and shaped, and which frame her face, also made up impeccably. Although there are only a few years between us, I suddenly feel unfeminine and very young with my makeup-free face and cut-off high-waisted jeans and loose t-shirt, an aesthetic that loses its trendiness in just a 20-minute drive out of the city. Instead, it looks glum against the spangles and popping colours, like I didn't have the imagination to get dressed properly. My mother often tries to coerce me into Indian reds and sparkles and embroidered skirts, and is exasperated by the ill-fitting jumpers and second-hand jeans that my friends and I revel in, and here, with this sparkling woman, I can finally understand it. She shows me her Instagram account and says it is funny but also sometimes disturbing that she still gets the occasional message telling her what she's doing is haram. She says it's only ever men who feel the need to point this out. She says there are so many people in her community who say that women enjoying their beauty defies Allah. She says she thinks they are scared of what beauty makes them feel. These people don't belong to any form of Islam I'm interested in, she says. To keep faith, you also have to find a way that makes sense for you in the modern day. When we get back in the car, Paul sneezes again and curses and then says, "How do you feel?" And we both agree that when we left her we felt giggly. "That," he says, starting the car, "that's the character you write then." The next morning I pitch it to a newspaper. A week later I hear back from the editor who says that while he likes the modest fashion movement, it needs reworking to focus on the refugee angle. He says before the piece can run, I need to make it more about Syria and the conflict and her pain, and to please turn it in by the end of the day. 5. I go to a small place out in the western suburbs, near the office where I work part-time, that is at the back of a family-run Chinese herb store. Inside it's all textures and bitter smells, cellophane packets filled with tisanes, crunchy dried barks crammed into baskets, and twisted roots hanging from the ceiling with pieces of twine that remind me of those squealing baby mandrake myths. We are treating my gut, which has been throbbing and squirming like some ferret inside me for the past year. The old man offers massage services, the hard, dry kind that pinch the skin and force a cry, but also make you certain that pain is the only way to get to the root of the problem. His daughter offers acupuncture services, and they work side by side. Most of my friends would roll their eyes at the thought of working with their parents because they'd feel they weren't making their mark. I think how splendid it must feel to be part of a family trade, and the two of them together are kind, the type of kind that allows you to just be silent. This is a rare gift. I always feel close to tears when I see them. The daughter takes me to the back of the shop to a tiny room with 2 little beds set up and a makeshift curtain to go around each. It is a bit like a change room at a market stall, just a loose curtain blowing in the wind. She gently adjusts the pillow. She is serene and graceful, and her skin always has a clear sheen to it, which makes her glow. And when I ask...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?